Okay, okay. So let's carry on. This is just the introduction to this sutta, and now we're going to come to the actual meat, the content, what actually this sutta is about. And so then the Buddha says, he says, mendicants, there are these two quests, these two searches, if you like, quests or searches. The noble quest or the noble search and the ignoble quest. And so much of the Dhamma is about being able to distinguish things, being able to discriminate between the good and the bad, distinguish between the good and the bad. And so this is part of this. We had to have some clarity about what is good and what is bad, what is useful and what is not. And when we gain that clarity, please come, you can walk in front, Venerable. Okay. Okay, very polite. Okay. So we need to be able to distinguish. Sometimes people say that we should not kind of discriminate people based on values and these kind of things, but actually it's very important that we're able to distinguish between what is useful in life and what is not. Otherwise, there's no way forward. And this is part of this ability to discriminate, understanding the distinction between what is truly noble and what is ignoble. And so the Buddha then starts off by discussing what is ignoble, so we can first of all get clarity about that, then we can discard that, and then we can move on to the positive things afterwards. So this is how the Buddha defines this. And what is the ignoble search or the ignoble quest? It's when someone who is themselves liable to be reborn seeks what is also liable to be reborn. Themselves liable to grow old, liable to fall sick, liable to die, liable to sorrow, liable to become corrupted. They seek what is also liable to these things. So you have a problem. And all of these things are problems. Maybe rebirth is a bit difficult to understand why that is a problem, but actually that also is a problem according to Buddhism. And you may know that already. May not be obvious why it is, but that too is a problem. These other things are more easy to understand. Getting old, not so great. Becoming sick definitely sucks. Dying, and I don't know what you think about dying, whether you think it's a good idea or not, but most people don't like the idea of dying. Sorrowing, absolutely bad. No one wants to sorrow. Becoming corrupt, not a good idea, right? So all of these things are bad things. And so when we have things that are bad in our life, then we should seek a solution to those bad things. But most people, instead of finding a solution to bad things, they seek other things that have exactly the same problem, for goodness sake. We seek relationships with people in the world who have exactly fall into the same problems. We seek possessions that also have a similar kind of problem. They will eventually disappear. They will eventually get corrupted and all of these kind of things. We seek status. We seek an identity in a certain way that also is subject to these laws of impermanence and uncertainty and unreliability. And so almost everything we seek in the world, we already have a problem, and then we seek more of the same problem by looking for things in the world that actually are subject to the same things. That is why it is called an ignoble quest. There's enough suffering already, and we go looking for more suffering in the world. That's kind of powerful insight of the Buddha, right? What we are doing, we think that we are looking for happiness. We think that we are searching for something positive, but actually what we are searching for is really more suffering. That is what the Buddha is saying. So when you are looking for that perfect or good thing in your life, whatever it is, most of the time you're asking for more suffering because of that. It's hard to really understand. But if we can get our heads around this, then we're starting to understand what the Buddhist teaching really is about. Why it is so powerful, why it is so different from how everyone else in the world tends to think. So the things that most people in the world think are happiness, we think we are finding happiness in the world. Actually, they turn out to be suffering. And the Buddha says, and it's a very beautiful saying that you find in the suttas, they're saying that what ordinary people in the world think of as happiness, the enlightened ones, the Aryas, think of as suffering. What the ordinary people think of as suffering, the enlightened one think of as happiness. So it's like you turn things almost upside down. This is what makes the Dhamma so profound. Most people are searching in the wrong place. They're searching, thinking they're looking for happiness, and all they find is dung. They find garbage. They find rubbish. They find, I don't know if you prefer American English, trash. Rubbish is English, British English, trash is American English. You have to, when you, I do translations, so I have to be consistent, either American English or British English. So it's bad, right? This is kind of the thing here. And we don't understand this. And this is what makes the Dhamma so powerful and so unique and so different, is that shift in perspective, understanding the world in a new way. And of course, you can start to see now why this connects very powerful with meditation practice. Because if you understand that the ordinary things of the world actually are a problem, you won't think about it anymore. You won't have an interest in it. When you sit down, you're not going to think about solving things that are useless anyway. So your mind turns towards the Dhamma. It turns towards the breath. It turns towards peace instead. And this is how this right view, the right understanding, must lead. If it is powerful enough, if it is established enough, it leads to good meditation. The more you purify that right view, the more powerful your meditation is going to get. Not just your meditation, but your sila is going to become more powerful. The entire Noble Eightfold Path depends on right view at the foundation, at the base, to make all the other factors work. So this is the idea here, the idea that we already have a problem, and now we want to compound that problem. So I'm going to talk more about how rebirth works here. It's kind of fascinating that it starts with being reborn, right? Reborn is like the basis here, and all the other things come from the idea of rebirth. And that shows you how important rebirth is in Buddhism. It is the most important, comes first, and all the other things come afterwards. And the reason why rebirth comes first is because it is the continuation of these things that is the problem. Okay, we're going to die in this life. We have no choice, unfortunately. Everyone is going to have to die. But what we want to avoid is not so much death, because you can't avoid that. What we want to avoid is re-death. So we should talk more about not just rebirth, but also re-death. Re-old age, re-sorrow, re-corruption. That is the real problem. So once you start with rebirth, then it is the re-happening of these things again and again and again. That is really what is at stake here. So should this be... Actually, it's a very interesting point right here, because the term that he has translated, but the Suddhata has translated as rebirth, is actually jati, and jati is usually translated as birth. So which one is correct? A few years ago, I went to Oxford University. I was in England. I was visiting Venerable Chanda, one of the nuns over there, and she has a little vihara, a little monastery close to Oxford University. And so some of the dons at Oxford University invited me to give a talk. And I was, what? They want to hear a monk give a talk? Okay, whatever. So I went I went there. Of course, I had to talk about academic things. You can't talk about Dhamma, right? So you have to talk about academic things and sneak in a few points of Dhamma as you kind of talk about academic things. That's kind of how you do things. Because Dhamma is really what is interesting. But they are interested in academic things. These professors over there and these lecturers at Oxford University. It was really good fun, actually. I'd never been to Oxford University before. And when you, because you are invited as a guest speaker, you get in behind the scenes, so you kind of get to see this university. It's a very magnificent place, Oxford University. And so I was there, and then I gave this talk, and what I talked about was translating from Pali into English from a monastic perspective. That was kind of my talk. So I had an academic slant. And then I said, and I gave a number of examples of how we should translate, yeah? And one of the things I said was precisely this: we should translate jati as rebirth instead of birth. And some of them really didn't like that. Yeah, they were really against that, because to them, jati means birth. So how can you translate it as rebirth? Some of them seemed to like it, interestingly, and some of them were against it. That's kind of usual thing in the world. There's some like and some don't. And this is, I think, one of those fundamental differences between coming from something from an academic point of view and coming from something from a spiritual point of view. The spiritual point of view, you want to imbue these terms with real meaning. What do they actually mean? What is the Buddha pointing to? It is not an academic exercise in saying the meaning of this word is fixed by its etymology, by its roots, by how it is derived. That is kind of irrelevant. What we're trying to convey is meaning, something which actually has a real purpose in life. That is what we're trying to convey on the spiritual path. And for the Buddha, birth means rebirth. In fact, in ancient Indian society, and I was surprised that these Oxford people didn't understand this, because to me it's a bleedingly obvious point. Just because you go to Oxford University doesn't mean you're very smart. That's what I figured out after this. So I said, well, actually, in that culture, jati means rebirth. Whenever they used the word birth, it meant rebirth to them, because every instance of birth is rebirth. That was part of the culture at that time. And so when they heard the word jati, they actually heard the idea of rebirth. And so for us, if we want to give the same kind of information to a modern audience as that audience in India got 2,500 years ago, we should translate it as rebirth. Only then are we conveying the same information to the audience as they were getting at that time. So this matters, right? Matters. It makes a big difference in how we think about things. And when you think about the Four Noble Truths, the first Noble Truth, everyone hopefully knows about the Four Noble Truths. If not, we can ask later on. Four Noble Truths, the first Noble Truth is a Noble Truth of dukkha. There is suffering. Dukkha, very important Pali word. If you don't know dukkha, you will know it at the end of this retreat, I promise. I will say it all the time. Dukkha, dukkha, dukkha. Yeah. And sukha, it may be even more important. Sukha means happiness, dukkha means suffering. Yeah. And so the first Noble Truth is a Noble Truth about dukkha. Yeah? And what that says, it starts off with jati pi dukkha. Birth is suffering. Yeah? But is it birth or is it rebirth? Actually, there too, it is actually rebirth. And the reason is because we're trying to overcome dukkha. The only dukkha you can overcome in terms of birth is the future rebirth. You are already born in this life. It was already a big mistake you made. That's why you're here. I made it too. Yeah, we all made that same mistake together. And so now the only birth we can overcome is future birth. Yeah? So that is why rebirth is the right word right there. And so again, rebirth is the right way of translating these things. And then from that, because we have been reborn, that is why all of these other problems arise. If you weren't reborn, you wouldn't have any of these problems. Yeah. So rebirth is the starting point and where all of these things kind of begins. So you are liable. You are, you have to deal with these things: old age, falling sick, dying, sorrowing, becoming corrupted, etc., etc. Sounds terrible. It's kind of weird, isn't it? We have to be told these things, and if we are not told, we don't take them seriously. Even though they are kind of obvious, it's obvious that these things have to happen. We don't really take it on board properly. And the younger we are, the more difficult it is to take these things on board. And usually that's why you see, around the world, you see the people who come to Dhamma talks and things, usually old people. You have to become old before you understand that old age is bad, right? The young people, they kind of, whatever, give me the iPhone, I'm too busy kind of doing whatever. This is kind of the problem. So the point here, we need to learn this early on. We need to really grasp that these are the realities of life. And this is one of the things I want to get out of talking about this. You may think of yourself as young, yeah, but remember, no matter how young you are, old age is already inside of you. It is there, waiting inside, waiting to come out. It's already part of you. If there is rebirth, it means you have been old before. Yeah, don't wait till you become old to take these truths on board. Because if you take these truths on board while you are still young, you can actually do something about it. The longer you wait, the less ability you will have to deal with these issues. Now is the chance. Yeah, these are profound things. It takes a while to be able to deal with these things. So you want to take the opportunity straight away. And so, yeah. So let's see what the Buddha has to say. I'll go into much more detail about this in a second, but let's just follow how the Buddha talks about this. So he says, first of all, and what should be described as liable to be reborn? So what are these things that get reborn? Partners and children, male and female servants, goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants and cattle, gold and money. I'm not sure if that, well, okay, gold and money, whatever, are liable to be reborn. These attachments are liable to be reborn. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to being reborn, seeks what is also liable to be reborn. So the idea here is the idea of all, especially beings. Beings are liable to be reborn. Partners and children, this is like your family, yeah, male and female servants. Then you have all of these animals, and the reason why there are so many animals is because in those days, people tended to have animals, and your wealth was very often counted in animals. Yeah, how many cows do you have? How many horses do you have? Etc. etc. How many elephants do you have? Yeah, kind of nice to have some elephants, but then they die. The elephants too have to die, right? That's the problem with the elephants. And then the last one, which is interesting there, gold and money is also liable to be reborn. Yeah, gold and money fades away, and then sometimes I think it's not entirely clear why it is there. Maybe it could be a mistake because it belongs further down. It belongs to being corrupted, because gold and money certainly does get corrupted. But it also can be regarded in a kind of other sense, that it kind of gets melted down, it disappears gradually, it comes back again. But the main point here is that rebirth is about people and animals. Yeah, they carry on in this round of existence. And so they have this problem of carrying on in samsara, of being subject to this eternal merry-go-round, round and round and round, carrying on, doing the same silly things in life after life, never really finding a solution, always trying to resolve the problem in the wrong place, and carry on like this, seemingly for eternity itself. That's the problem. So if you attach to these things, yeah, it means you are attaching to people that are subject to rebirth, people who are subject, or beings that are subject to all of these problems in the future. And if you are attached to things that are subject to problems, well, it means that you are building up more problems for yourself at the same time. So what does it mean to be attached to these things? Well, it means, what does it mean to seek these things? And it says here, seeking these things means that you are tied, infatuated, and attached to them. Yeah, because if you are tied to something, if you are attached to something, it means that you want that thing to be in a certain way. So if you are attached to your husband and wife, or your partner, or your children, or your parents, or people, or whatever it is, if you are attached to them, it means that you want them to be in a certain way. Yeah? So what is it that you want? Well, first of all, you don't normally want them to die. If you want them to die, it's a bad sign, right? It's usually better not to want them to die, because otherwise it will very thin ice. So that attachment, yeah, it means that we are seeking something in those people that we cannot get. We seek them to always, we want them to always be kind to us. Impossible, they're not always going to be kind to you. You want them always to do the right thing, yeah? When we tell them to something, we want them to do the right thing. That's never going to happen, never going to do exactly the right thing. We don't want them to get sick or old and die. They're going to disappoint you. Guaranteed they're going to go sick and old and die. And so we are seeking all of these things, yeah? Because we are tied to them, that we can never actually have. And so we are seeking the ignoble on the ignoble search, looking for something that can never actually be had in this world. And then because we are seeking that, and because we are stupid enough to believe that, or we can't really deal with it properly, then when eventually they die, then we cry, we are sad, we are tearful, it's terrible, it's sorrow, we're lamenting, we have so much dukkha because of that. This is where we go wrong. We are seeking for things in the world that the world can never give you. This is what ordinary people are like, looking for something that can never be had. And we need to understand that this is a problem, and we need to turn our search in a different direction. It is actually so simple. Yeah, it is such a simple thing, the Buddhist idea. It is the things are staring us in the face. The problems of life are so easy to understand. The solution is also actually very simple. The solution is to be kind. The solution is to be generous. The solution is not to get angry. The solution is to have metta, care and compassion for the world. The solution is to give things, let go a little bit. It is to meditate. It is to be peaceful. That is what the solution is. Actually a very, very simple solution. It's not hard to understand at all. And yet somehow we're not able to really fully practice that solution. And the reason why we're not able to do it fully is because we don't understand the right view, the truth of these things fully. If you really understood what was going on, that means you would be a stream mentor. You would be kind all the time. You would never mess things up. Yeah? Why? Well, because you understand the urgency. You understand what really matters, what is really important. It's such a simple path, and yet somehow we're not able to do that simplicity because we're not really able to wrap our heads around the simple truths of life. That is why this is so important, to come back to these teachings again and again and again, and to really reflect about them and see what we can do about them. Then we reduce our ties, we reduce our attachments, we reduce our infatuation. And eventually that we stop seeking the ignoble things in the world, and we seek the noble things instead. So this is what is liable to be reborn. So let us carry on. What should be described as liable to grow old? Partners and children, male and female servants, goat and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants and cattle, gold and money are liable to grow old. Yeah, I guess gold and money, they kind of wear away after a while. Yeah, kind of the gold is not so shiny anymore. It loses its luster. Gradually it kind of wears away. Everything kind of wears away. This is like old age in a more metaphorical sense, not the literal sense of growing old so much, but more like metaphorical in the sense of decaying. These attachments are liable to grow old. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to grow old, seeks what is also liable to grow old. And what should be described as liable to sickness? Partners and children, male and female servants, goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants and cattle are liable to become sick. These attachments, these are all the things that we hold on to in the world, are liable to fall sick. If you are tied and infatuated and attached to these things that become sick, and because yourself are liable to become sick, you are seeking what is also liable to become sick. And what should be described as liable to die? Partners and children, male and female servants, goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants and cattle are liable to die. These attachments are liable to die. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to die, seeks what is also liable to die. And what should be described as liable to sorrow? Partners and children, male and female servants, goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants and cattle are liable to sorrow. These attachments are liable to sorrow. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to sorrow, seeks what is also liable to sorrow. Animals too sorrow. Animals too get depressed. Animals too are so close often to human beings, animals, and they can be seen to have many of the same emotions and many of the same problems that we have. And this is one of the ways of getting closer to the animals, of seeing the human aspect in them, the things that are similar to us as human beings. It's very useful if you want to have more compassion for animals. And what should be described as liable to corruption? Partners and children, male and female servants, goats and sheep, chickens and pigs, elephants and cattle, gold and money are liable to corruption. These attachments are liable to corruption. Someone who is tied, infatuated, and attached to such things, themselves liable to corruption, seeks what is also liable to corruption. This is the ignoble quest. So most of these things are kind of obvious. I'm sure you get your head around what is going on here. I'm going to discuss each of them in much more detail later on today when we have a chance. But the last one here is a little bit kind of not so clear. What does it mean that all of these things are liable to corruption? And one of the things that it means is that the Pali word here for corruption is sankilesa. Kilesa is a word that means a defilement. Sankilesa is the same. Upakilesa is another word for refined defilements. You find it in the suttas everywhere. Kilesa is a word that is used all over the Buddhist world. Kilet, it's in Thailand. It means defilement. So what does it mean? And it means that people around us, animals around us, are subject to these things. Sometimes the people who is our friend, the person who is our partner, our wife, our husband, our child, our parents, whatever they are subject to all of these defilements. And so you may think that you know who you're getting married to. You may think that you know your child, they are like this. But no, they change. And this is kind of scary, right? This is really scary because we don't really know who the person is. It is hard enough to know ourselves. How well do you know yourself? Actually, it's very hard to know yourself really well because you're changing all the time. Are you a certain person or are you not? One day you are a miserable person, another day you're really happy, depending on what has happened before and who you meet that day and whether you slept well or not or whatever you did, So it's hard enough to know ourselves, let alone other people. And so all of these people now, they are subject to corruption. They may start out as an angel and become an ogre or a demon. Sometimes it's the other way around. They start out as an ogre and become an angel, So most of you are probably like that. Starting out not so good, and then you come on the Buddhist path and become more and more pure. Wow, you become really nice after a while. That happens to people, They become much more beautiful because they practice the spiritual life. There's only one kind of beauty that matters. That is the spiritual beauty. Everything else is just very superficial. So this is one of the nice things about going on a retreat or being a monastic. Don't have to worry about what you look like on the outside. Instead, you worry about what you look like on the inside. And that is what matters, of course. And so people are liable to corruption. That's kind of really yucky. It means that we never know what's going to happen next. We never know the outcome of the people. Do you really want to marry someone or stay with somebody when you have no idea what they're going to turn out like in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, maybe next year already? It's kind of scary. It turns you off the idea of having those kind of attachments in your life because you don't know what's going to happen to these people. What about your children? What are they going to be like? Are they going to be like exactly the way you want them to be? Of course not. There's no way they're going to be like the way you want them to be. Children, one of the things to understand from the Buddhist teachings, very often in the world you have this discussion. Are human beings, are they conditioned by society, or is it genetic the way they turn out? Yeah, is it inheritance, or is it more environment that determines the child? And of course, from a Buddhist point of view, it's neither of those. It's your past life that determines who the person is. So when a child comes into this world, they already come with a fixed personality. Not entirely fixed, but in many ways it's already fixed. And so when they come into this world, you cannot expect to turn them around if they already have a very difficult personality. And so you have to largely accept a child the way they are. Yeah, you come in, your job is to look after them, to love them regardless. If they turn out to be criminal, well, they are a criminal. Yeah, that's the way it is. And maybe that's the way what they have to be. And your job is then to love that criminal child. And if you love that criminal child, then maybe they will turn around a little bit. Then you're giving them the maximum chances. But the idea is people are subject to corruption. You don't know what they're going to be like. You don't know how anything is going to turn out. And this is kind of scary. When it comes to gold and money, same thing is true for animals, right? Animals, you don't know, they can also become really, they can become angry sometimes. And there are stories in places like Sri Lanka of elephants becoming angry with monks and killing monks. Yeah, this happens because I don't know what the monk did, but maybe the elephant misunderstood, I'm not sure, but elephants are very dangerous because they are so big. Yeah, so if they kind of touch you in the wrong way, that's it, you're finished. That's what happens. And when it comes to gold and money, obviously that can be corrupted quite easily. Yeah, it can be corrupted by defilements of the gold, or the money can be counterfeit or fake or whatever. So this is also possible, of course. But this is the idea of corruption. So why do I talk like this? It sounds kind of very depressing, right? Now, one of the really important things about the Buddhist path is the idea of balancing positive qualities that we develop and feeling joy on the path. Very much of the Buddhist path is about finding happiness. So there's this balance of finding happiness on the one hand through good practice, through meditating in the right way, and on the other hand turning away from the world. And that turning away from the world increases your ability to find happiness. Yeah, because the happiness is blocked by our attachment to the world. So by turning away from that, the spiritual path starts to take off. And that is the reason why we look at these things in this way, because it enables you to change your course and actually then experience a more profound, a deeper, a more meaningful happiness rather than the superficial things of the world that are so unreliable, so uncertain, and you never know what's going to happen next. So that is why. So it's not just, I'm not saying these things just to make you depressed or sad. Yeah, that's not the reason. I'm not some kind of torturer. I haven't come here to torture you. I've come here to, hopefully, to help you see things in a better way. And I think many of these things are kind of obvious anyway, right? I think you will understand anyway that these things are true. The idea is just to take it to a deeper level so it has some real impact on your life and makes you move forward in the right way. So that is the ignoble quest. And the next one is, what is the noble quest? So now we had looked at the downside, and the next part is the upside. The next part is the happy path. Now we have looked at the suffering, the happy path comes next. And I'm going to stop there. So to make sure this is a good place to stop, because it means that you will come back this afternoon to listen to the happy path, yeah? Because that's kind of the idea. So you have to, one of my jobs is to sell the Dhamma in the right way, so this is kind of part of that salesmanship. So we'll see you back again at 3 o'clock, Della, is that right? So we'll see you back at 3 o'clock, so please have a nice lunch. Please enjoy yourself, have a nice time, and then we shall carry on. Okay, so let's just pay respect to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha.